Hello my viewers, welcome to Hoogar Social Academy. Today we are on the new topic, the topic from the history, class 10 standard, chapter number 3, the impact of the British rule in India. In this chapter we are going to learn about how there was a big impact after the rule of the British on the Indian territories in the form of civil service, in the form of judicial system, in the form of police system, in the form of military system. Even we are going to learn about the land taxation system. We are going to learn more about the British education system, and simultaneously with that we are going to learn about the constitutional development in the country called as India. These are all things we are going to learn in the topic called as the impact of British rule in India. Chapter number 3, history from class 10 standard. Right? Okay. Before this topic, the British of impact rule in India, let us have a recapitulation related to the first chapter and second chapter of the history of class 10 standard. In the first chapter, the chapter which taught us about advent of Europeans to India. So in that topic we learned the Europeans who arrived in this country called as India, and from there onwards they engaged themselves more than trade, they engaged themselves in the war, and it was the British who was successful. The second chapter, there where we studied about the extension of the British rule, where the British continued with its expansion in the Indian Empire by defeating the Marathas in the southern side and by defeating the Nawabs in the Bengal and by defeating the Sikh in the Punjab or the northern part of India. So this shows what it is, that almost the British have occupied many of the territories from the west, south, east and north. All four directions now he is his empire, which are now called as a British colony. Okay. The reflection of the first and second chapter we see in the third chapter, which is called as a impact of the British rule. Impact now. Okay. Now what type of impact we see? It has been found by the British that India in this country there are hundreds of kings are been ruling, and all the kings they are engaged themselves in the war with each other. There is no unity among the Indian kings. Everyone are in a conflict. They are fighting for the small areas. They are fighting to establish their supremacy. This was properly used by the British East India Company in the country called as India, with their cunning policies, like, as we have studied in our last chapters, the cunning policies like dual governance, the cunning policy like subsidiary alliance, doctrine of lapse. This we studied already. These are the cunning policies, right? Next, divide and rule policy. Fifth, war and negotiation policy. See, these are nothing but what we can say, these are the cunning policies of which one? Cunning policies of the British, which disturbed the smooth rule of the country called as India. So these are the cunning policies: dual governance, subsidiary alliance, doctrine of lapse, divide and rule policy, war and negotiation. Dual governance, which was introduced by the Robert Clive; subsidiary alliance, Lord Wellesley; doctrine of lapse, Lord Dalhousie. in the different areas of the country called as India, which totally collapsed the smooth administration of the country called as India, as British found that India is not in a one nation concept. India is divided from the one nation concept, as there is no unity is there. This caused what it is. This is the reason which made British to easily introduce these cunning policies in the country called as India, and that too these cunning policies again with the help of whom? With the help of the Indians. Indians damaged their administration by themselves. No one is responsible for that. British, by using his cunning policies, by his strength and power, that to strength and power again by the Indians, he defeated Indians by Indians. He defeated Indians by Indians. This is the reason in this chapter what we are going to learn after the occupation, after the defeat, after taking that empire in their hand and declaring after British colony, they started introducing their policies. Now they decided to bring everything under one law, whether it may be judiciary, whether it may be related to the military, whether it may be related to the education, right? Whether it may be related to the land tax system. Now they decided to bring everything into one part. This reason caused what it is that we saw many number of different laws were being introduced in the country called as India, but all the laws which are being implemented, those all laws are only and only for the Indians. Let us go one by one regarding these policies. The first one is what? It's about the topic is administration. Administration and judicial system. Administration and judicial system, and among that the topic is what? It's a civil service. The topic is what? Civil services. Now civil service, this was brought up by whom? By the Lord Cornwallis. Who brought this? Civil service was introduced by whom? By Lord Cornwallis. Till this period, till this introduction of the civil service, it is been found that all the authority of appointing the people for the different works, it was totally under the hands of whom? Under the hands of the East India Company. Who is this? East India Company used to do this, which was appointing. Okay, so the directors of East India Company were directly responsible for this, of appointing. But later period, it was being found that when it was decided to brought up the civil service system, which was not properly supported by whom, or directed by the whom, or supported by the whom, by the East India Company. It is been found that, right, before 18th century, the employments which were being taken place, as authority was in the hands of the directors of East India Company, it is been found that the officials of East India Company, they become corrupt. Officials of East India Company, they become corrupt. This is the reason it was been found that many of the officials, they were framing their own rules and regulations, which caused what it is that it is been found that many of the East India Company officials, they become rich, not only rich, super rich. To stop this corruption, in the year 1773, what was being introduced? Regulating Act was being introduced. What was introduced? Regulating Act was introduced to stop what? To stop the corruption. To stop the corruption. In this, the first role was being played by the whom? By the Lord Cornwallis, by introducing what? Introducing the civil service system. Okay, so keeping that in mind, Lord Cornwallis, he started the college called as a Fort William College. He started what? Fort William College at the place called as a Calcutta. What he did, he brought up Fort William College at the place called as a Calcutta, for what? Those Indians who want to be the part of which one? Part of the civil service. But in the year, this was done in the year 18th century. Okay, but what it was been found that as the directors of East India Company didn't give any sort of support, which caused what it is that the civil service didn't got it importance up to the period of 1853. But after 1853 onwards, the civil service was been properly, it was been brought up in the way in the India, which caused what it is that many of the Indians also participated in the way in the civil service. But Lord Cornwallis, who is this? Lord Cornwallis, as we know, British were the British. Lord Cornwallis blamed to the Indians by saying that all the native Hindustan are corrupt. Who said this? Lord Cornwallis quotes all the native Hindustan are corrupt. This causes what? As a result, that all the higher posts are not eligible to the Indians. So one side, British gives the opportunity to the Indians to participate in the civil service, to become the part of the administration of the British Empire, to sit on the high post. But another side, the same East India Company, the same British says all the native Hindustans are corrupt, so they should not be allowed to have the high post. This shows what it is that British, they just for the sake of the name, they are bringing the Indians to be the part of the administration, but they are not given as a part of administration. So this was related to the civil service. Another side we are going to learn related to the judicial system. The second one is what? The second one is judicial system. Now this judicial system, which we have already studied in our first chapter, in the form of dual governance. After the Battle of Buxar, when the whole Bengal went directly under the hands of the British, and Robert Clive, who introduced the dual governance, who took the power from the Mughal Empire, right? So all authority of collection of the revenue, it went under the hands of the British East India Company. Now here, to make it more strong, the judicial system under the leadership of Warren Hastings, again the Governor General, under leadership of whom? Warren Hastings brought up two codes in the period of 1773. In the period of 1772, Warren Hastings brought up two codes. One, it is called as a civil code, and another one is called as a criminal code. Okay, this is Diwani Adalat. This is Diwani Adalat. This is called as with a two name, Fauzdari and Nizamat Adalat. Okay, two courts are there. Warren Hastings in the year 1772 to have their supremacy, they introduced two courts, civil court as well as a criminal court. Civil court which is addressed as well as Diwani Adalat, and criminal court as a Fauzdari Adalat and Nizamat Adalat. Okay, now this civil court and criminal court, they will work on the guidelines of whom? Guidelines of the British, given by whom? By the British. On that guidelines it is going to work. Okay, civil court, and here they say the punishment how it was being kept. Hindus, according to Hindu scripture, punishments. These are the punishment. Hindus were being according to the Hindu scriptures. Islam or Muslims, those who follow the religion called as Islam, on the Shariat. On the Shariat. In this way, what is been done? Hindus were being given on the base of Hindu scriptures. Muslims were being given on the form of Sharia. Okay. Criminal code, it was under the hands of the Qazis. Here, civil code under the hands of the British officers. Criminal code under the hands of the Qazis, and then the next person is the British officers. Overall, to be said, British officer is the boss of which one? Boss of this code. Okay. So in this way, officers. So civil code and criminal code totally under the hands of the British officer. In this way, what it is that judicial system which was introduced by Warren Hastings, it also played a very important role in keeping the tight control of the Indians in their hand. Okay, so in our further topic we are going to learn related to the police system as well as about the military system and land tax systems.